Hi everyone, this is Darren here, and today's topic is how to complete the square. So the purpose of completing the square is so that you can solve equations of circles. That's one. There's another purpose. The second purpose would be just solving quadratic equations. So take note of these two purposes as we go about learning how to complete the square. So now I'm going to teach you how to complete the square with these three examples. Let's start off with the first example. Okay, so suppose we have x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals to 0. Okay, so normally if I've used the cross method to solve this, okay, let's do it quickly over here. X squared 4x plus 3. So we'll get x plus 3 and x plus 1 equals 0, and then our answer will be x equals to negative 3 or negative 1. Correct? So that's how we solve this question if we were to use the cross method. But completing the square is another method and it will look as such. Okay? So instead of doing that, the answers will be the same but it's a totally different method. So completing the squares uses slightly some of our knowledge of identities. Why do I say that? Okay, because the very first step of completing the square is we have to reduce these terms here, the terms here. Reduce it in such a way whereby this is a x square. If this was a, for example, 2x square plus 8x plus 6 equals to 0, we cannot do completing the square yet. We have to reduce it to a 1x square. So just in this case, you realize that all can be divided by 2, so it's great. So we just say x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0, and it's back to our original question. Okay, even if this was, let's say, a 9, it's okay. You still can do it. This will be a 9, but then this will just be a 4.5. Nothing wrong with that. Just like the answer would be slightly more complicated. That's fine. Okay, but let's just see how do we solve this basic example here. So the first step, the first key is that you have to realize that this is a x squared and nothing else, not a 2x squared, etc. And then the second step, now after you've made sure this is just x squared, the second step is to look at the x term. So the x term will always have a number in front. And if there's no number in front, it's a 1. So take note of that also. So in this case, the number in front is 4. So what we have to do is, we take the half of this number. No matter what number it is, we take half of it. So half of 4 is just 2. So what we're going to do is, we're going to do an x plus 2 square. Alright? So now, allow me to deviate from one. I mean, it's not deviating, but it will seem like I'm deviating actually. But I'll explain to you later how this is related to this, okay? So we're just going to expand this out, x plus 2 square. So these two numbers I've gotten from here, x squared, just take an x out, and here, take half of this 4x. So it's a half, right? Half of 4 is 2, so we just take a 2 here. So now we expand this out, and this will give us x squared plus 4x plus 4. Alright? So this is important because what happens is we're going to compare this with this. What's the difference? Isn't it just the number 1? Yes, it is. So this here has an additional 1. So can I convert this here to this? We could, right? I just need to minus a 1. So if I minus 1 here, I would also have to minus 1 on the left hand side, right? Because this equals to this. Yes? So that's very true. So now let me just do that. So I'll minus a 1 here. This will be equals to this. And we know that plus 4 minus 1 gives us positive 3. So suddenly, what seems like a deviation is actually back to our original question, isn't it? Because with a x plus 2 square minus 1, we are back to what we have at the start. So this is the trick of completing the square. So realize that this equals to this, therefore, you can just replace this thing here with this thing here, and say that this thing here equals to 0, right? So now we're going to solve this part here. So we're just going to put x plus 2 square equals to 1. And then we're going to remove the square root. We're going to remove the square by square rooting both sides. So this will give us x plus 2 equals to plus minus square root 1. And we know that square root 1 is just simply 1. So I'll rewrite it as 1. And now we're going to solve. So x equals to 1 minus 2 or minus 1 minus 2. So this gives us 1 minus 2 just negative 1, and minus 1 minus 3 giving us negative 3. So these are our two answers, okay? And recall that these two answers are the same as the ones earlier that we found through the cross method. Okay, so see, this method is called completing the square, and it's all about just getting this part here, taking half of this, and then adding or minusing the difference so that this becomes the same term here, and then replacing it. And then from there we solve. Okay, so this is completing the square. Alright, then move on to a more tricky example. Suppose this isn't an even number, it's an odd number, right? So we will be working with halves instead. Let's see. Is working with halves more complicated? Yes, it is. So sometimes we will have to use calculator for this type of questions, and that's fine. Okay, don't be deterred like some people. They see, oh, it's not a whole number, means I'm on the wrong track, let's not do it. Okay, in this case, if it's a non-whole number, very well, the answer might still be right, the workings might still be right, and you might be still on the right path, so don't worry about that. Okay, so suppose we have this second example, x squared plus 9x plus 8 equals 0. Okay, so again, this is already x squared and it's not 2x squared, so this is good. Step 1 is checked, it's clear. So let's see, how about this 9x? So the second step is to take half of this, correct? Yeah, so 9x, the half of 9 would be just 4.5. So we're going to again just look at the number in front, don't look at the x. Okay, so just going to take half of 9 and that's 4.5. So we're going to get x plus 4.5 square equals to, so now we're going to expand this. And what does this give us? X squared plus 9x plus 20.25. Okay, in this example, maybe you might need a calculator to solve this, but I've already solved this separately, so I'm able to do it quickly. But this is my point. Don't be deterred by the decimal places. Okay, so now again, we're going to compare this with this. What's the difference? It's actually just a difference of minus 12.25, right? If I minus 12.25 from this, I'll get 8, correct? So therefore, this part here, if I minus 12.25, because I have to minus this side and this side, I have to be fair, right? Minus it on the right hand side, minus it on the left hand side. So this will just give me an 8, correct? Yes. So this is an 8. So can you see now that this is our original question, and this part here is equals to our original question. So we can rewrite our original question as this. And that's the whole point of this method of completing the square. So now, okay, let me just rewrite it out nicely. So minus 12.25 equals to 0. So with all that working and calculation, it is so that we can take this step. And really it's a big conversion, see, because this and this, they don't look very much alike, but actually if you expanded them out, they are the same. So that is an important thing to take note of. Okay, so now that we've almost there, we've changed the form, let's just go ahead and solve. So we have an x plus 4.5 square equals to 12.25. And then I want to square it both sides. So this gives me x plus 4.5 equals to plus minus square root 12.25. And the square root of 12.25 I have calculated separately is just 3.5. Okay, so hence I'm just going to go ahead and solve, right? So I'm just going to get x equals to 3.5 minus 4.5 or minus 3.5 minus 4.5. So this gives me equals to -1 or -8. And these two answers will be the final answer for this example. So, alright, let's move on to the third example, where instead of a positive here, let's put a negative here, alright? And see whether this method of completing the square still works and can we still solve the question. Okay, so suppose we have 2x squared minus 16x plus 14 equals to 0. Okay, so let's see. Step 1, make sure this is x squared. Hey, wait a minute, this isn't x squared, right? So this is 2x squared. So we can't do our completing the square first. We actually have to do a step before we can go about doing that. So I have to make this x squared. So how do I make it x squared? I divide this by 2. So if I divide this by 2, I have to divide the whole equation by 2. So this just makes the equation become x squared minus 8x plus 7 equals to 0. Okay, so step 1. See, I added this here so that you really get the idea of step 1, whereby it wouldn't work if this is 2x squared. Okay, so now we're going to look at the second number here, and this is a -8. This is step 2. Look at this number. So -8. So if you take half of that, right? So half of -8 will just be -4. So I'm just going to do a x minus 4 square. Okay, so don't put a plus, but put a minus now since this is a negative number. So x minus 4 square, what does this give me? Again, expand it out, we get x square minus 8x plus 16. Okay, so now we're going to compare this with this, and what's the difference? This is 9 higher than this, so if I minus 9 from here, I minus 9 from here, I would be fair, right? And this part here will just give me a plus 7. So now I can replace this with this. So that's the point of this exercise again. So let me just do that. Minus 9 equals to 0. And now we're going to bring the 9 across, -9 across, which leaves us with x minus 4 square equals to 9. And I square root both sides, and we know that square root 9 is just 3. So this is going to be x minus 4 equals to plus minus 3. So now what's going to happen? We're going to go ahead and solve, and we're going to get x equals to 3 minus 4 or minus 3 minus 4. So this gives us equals to -1 or -7. And with that, we have also solved, using the completing the square method, a question that has a negative middle term, and even with a 2x, starting for 2x square. So these are some of the points to look out for completing the square. I would say with practice, it's actually not a very difficult topic and not a very difficult method to master. So please go ahead and practice this, and learn it well, so next time you can use it to help you in your exams and exercises. So I hope that you learned something from this video, and please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.